Welcome to XYPN Radio, where your host Alan Moore brings you into a community of fee-only financial planners who want to profitably and successfully serve Gen X and Gen Y clients. If you're ready to get the knowledge you need from leaders in your field, learn from forward-thinking advisors, and take action on your own goals, XYPN Radio is the show for you. Here's your host.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of XYPN Radio. I'm Maddie Roach, your host for today's podcast. I'm excited to have XYPN member Rob Brown, owner of Brownsboro Financial, a fee-only firm in Beverly Hills, California, on the show today. Rob had a unique route into the financial planning world. For most of his career, Rob worked as a production manager in the film industry. Although he enjoyed it, he found that he was craving a career switch. Because of his personal interest in financial planning and his experience working with a not fee-only advisor, Rob decided he wanted to be a financial planner. Rob's husband, Jamie, is a CPA and owns his own tax firm. And in an effort to balance the life they wanted to live while giving back the way they wanted to give back, Rob and Jamie structured their businesses in unison. Rob supports Jamie's CPA firm while slowly and intentionally building his advisory practice on the side. The reason for this? They adopted their first child 18 months ago. As Rob explains, being a first-time father is life-changing, and the flexibility afforded to him through his new career was exactly what he was looking for. Although most of his 14 clients are internal referrals from the CPA firm or friends and family, Rob is thrilled with his choice to change careers. Rob's story is unique in that he knew he didn't want to run a big firm, but instead run one that complemented his life. As you'll hear in this interview, it's proving to work. If you've ever wondered how you can use flexibility to support your ideal life, you won't want to miss today's episode.
XYPN Network's annual benchmarking survey is out. Are you curious about the average number of clients XYPN members get in their first year, or how successful niches really are? To answer these burning questions and more, we've again enlisted a professional research firm to complete our annual benchmarking study. Get your copy hot off the press and discover vital statistics such as the median advisor revenue by years in practice and sources of firm growth, from referrals to blogging, social media, and more. Head over to xyplanningnetwork.com/study to purchase your copy today.
You can find any of the resources we mentioned during the episode at xyplanningnetwork.com/242. Also be sure to go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to join our private group just for XYPN Radio listeners. It's the community of advisors we've all been looking for that's there to provide support when we need it the most. Best of all, it's free. I encourage you to check it out. Again, that's xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP. Without further ado, here's my interview with Rob Brown. Hey, Rob, welcome to XYPN Radio. How are you?
Hi, Maddie. I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. Been looking forward to this.
Absolutely. I've really looked forward to this interview as well. I think you have so much to offer our listeners from the perspective of a career changer. I want to dive right in and understand what you've built and where your career has taken you and what you have today. So go ahead and paint us a picture of the firm you've created, Rob.
Okay. Well, I started the firm Brownsboro Financial about 3.5 years ago. It was the summer of 2016. So, and I'm very, very new to this field. So I didn't have any prior experience. My background is in the film industry. Yes, quite a difference from where I am now. So how I got there was, well, I grew up in Texas, always had a passion for film. I actually grew up on a ranch in Texas. So I grew up out in the country, always wanted to go to the city. So I went to UT, graduated with a film degree, moved out to LA. Worked in the film industry for about 15 years, worked my way up to be a production coordinator on some pretty big movies. But then you get to that point in your career where, okay, I either move forward with this or I take a turn. And it was time to take a turn. The industry wasn't as fulfilling as it was when I started. I felt like I was fighting for everything and just decided to take a step back. About the same time, my relationship with my now husband was developing, and I didn't want to be out of town for months at a time. Sometimes I'd be out of town for 5 or 6 months. So I didn't want to do that anymore and wanted to sort of settle down. And I'd always had an interest in financial planning, or mostly investment management. I did my own investment management at the time. I started doing that, and that's kind of maybe another subject. But a long story short, I ended up doing my own investment management because I was introduced to an investment advisor at Wells Fargo who put me in some really bad funds. And when I realized that I was paying a lot in fees, I started researching it and started doing it myself. So the interest in financial planning was always there, but I guess there was some influence from my partner because he's a CPA. And we started dating when he started his own CPA firm. He worked at a firm and then went off on his own. So he was growing his business while I was thinking about transitioning my business, or my career rather. And so I decided to start taking classes at UCLA, fulfilled the education requirement for the CFP curriculum, and then jumped right into the exam with no experience and passed it the first time. And I'm glad I did it, because I don't know if I worked to get the employment requirement, I don't know if I would have been able to retain that information. So I'm glad I did it the way I did. I kind of did it a little bit backwards. I guess I should tell you, I was able to get my employment requirement through Jamie's CPA firm. And so we discussed that as far as me working with him, because I couldn't find a company that was looking to hire someone like me with no experience. And we thought that the knowledge I could obtain from a CPA firm would be really good. And so we gave it a go. Working together for some couples may not be ideal, but it worked for us. And it took me about 3 years to get the employment requirement, but got the CFP. So that's where we're at. We kind of bounce off of each other. He has the CPA firm. I have the CFP firm, mostly because of compliance reasons. As you know, financial planning can be a little bit more cumbersome when it comes to compliance. But, I've received some clients from him and vice versa. So it's, we thought it was a good opportunity for us to add investment management and financial planning to the overall firm. So that's where we're at.
Absolutely. There's so much to unpack here, Rob, and I'm excited to kind of take it piece by piece. I want to go back to you being in the film industry. You are quite humble in your discussion of that. Tell us about how that kind of teed you up for the career now. I'm interested in what the film industry is all about, and how did it lead you to wanting to make such a big switch? I mean, you really can't get more different in terms of careers. What was your experience like?
I had a wonderful time in the film industry. I was able to work on some really good, fun, big movies. I worked mostly in movies, not a lot of TV. But, you learn quickly how to collaborate as a group, because it is just one big unit and everyone has their job, but it all works intricately together. And if one department or one person isn't doing their job, the whole production slows down. So you learn very quickly to collaborate. You also learn a lot of problem solving. When you show up to set, you don't know what's going to happen. You could have a location problem, you could have an actor problem, and you've got to figure out how you're going to resolve it, because every day is literally millions of dollars. So I worked in production. We handled a lot of the detailed, getting crew to where they needed to be, hotels, transportation, getting equipment where it needed to be, hiring the department heads, stuff like that, which is everything that I loved about it. I loved being behind the camera. I wasn't really involved with the writing or anything like that, but I liked the physical production aspect of it. But I ended up transitioning to the accounting department. So I worked the past few years in the entertainment industry as an assistant accountant. That kind of teed me up to budgets and cash flows. And once I started realizing what I'm doing is a lot of financial planning, I saw, accountants don't make a whole lot of money in the film industry. So I was like, I could be doing this and work a lot less and make about the same or make more. So, it wasn't a financial decision, but it definitely was an aspect of it. But I think ultimately it was having the flexibility. Jamie and our schedules would never match up. So we figure if we kind of work together, we can at least, we're not dependent on getting the time off for anybody. And at the same time, we were down the road with adoption. So after we got married, we quickly moved in that direction. So the whole family coming together was a good transition point to go from, the crazy lifestyle of entertainment to a little bit more of a, settling down aspect of the office and working for ourselves.
Yeah. I really appreciate that you looked at the kind of life that you wanted to live and looked for a career change that could help you achieve that. I think that being the motivation can really help you land on something that works. And it sounds like you have found that. I'm interested, as someone who is a career changer, who planted the seed that going out on your own was an option?
Actually, there were some other financial planners that I talked to in the LA area. One person actually used to work in post-production in the film industry and is now a CFP. So that was someone who I went to get some advice early on. And when I couldn't find a job elsewhere, she just said, just do it. You have the
Wow.
information, you have the knowledge. Anything you don't know, you could find the answer to. So just go out and do it. And I
Hmm.
was like, okay, why not? Right? Why not?
Yeah.
Just go for it. So that's what I did.
And you prioritize the CFP curriculum, which is really awesome. I know from experience working with career changers that the CFP is often a designation they want to get, but
Mhm.
it isn't always in the cards as you build a business. And so talk to the listeners about how you did that with your
Okay.
CFP while you built your business.
Well, I thought at the very beginning, when I was researching it, CFP kept coming up, and I was like, if I'm going to differentiate myself from everybody else out there and no experience, I've got to have some credibility. And coming from the film industry, it's all about your credits. So I was like, I want the CFP. So that's when I started the education program, because I figure if I can get that, it shows people, I may not have the experience, but I have the drive and I have the knowledge in order to get it.
Totally.
So that I figured was could be an advantage.
Tell us about what it was like to really kind of open that business. And did you join XYPN to help you start it, or did you start it on your own? And who were you trying to emulate? Who were you looking up to at the time?
Well, I definitely joined XYPN to help me get the business up and running, because that was the biggest challenge for me. This was an industry that I knew very little about. I knew there was a lot of compliance issues, looking at everything from a state standpoint to just, the general, just getting a business up and running. Some of the things I was able to do because I had the experience from the CPA firm, like starting an LLC and all that kind of stuff, but it was compliance, which that is what ended up leading me to XYPN. I was like, well, this is like a one-stop shop. I can get my compliance done, and I've got this this technology package that comes with it, so that's what I needed to do. So I ended up joining. This is kind of funny because I ended up joining, but I couldn't. Well, I tried to join, but I couldn't join because I didn't have my CFP, or I didn't have the Series 65. So I was like, oh, I need to go pass this test now.
Yes, you are allowed to join You're allowed to join XYPN without your Series 65. The problem is you can't register without the CFP or the
Right, or the
65. You need one of
65.
the two.
So I needed one of the two, and I didn't have my CFP then because I was still ways away
Mhm.
from my employment requirement. So I went and studied for the test, failed it the first time, passed it the second time. I was like, okay, I am going to have to work a little bit harder for this.
It's usually the opposite, that people will fail the CFP and pass the 65. You seem to have no issue with the CFP exam, and the 65 stumped you.
It did. It did. I guess I kind of took it for granted. I was like, oh, I
Yeah,
know it. I didn't really study a whole lot. And then I, woke up and like, oh, okay, I do need to
yeah,
study for this. So
definitely.
anyway, it was, I think XYPN really helped me get my company going because, Scott and everybody with the compliance team, of course, but then, being able to talk to various people about how they got their business up and running, especially for career changers like myself.
We really do have a pretty impressive group of career changers, and they're some of the most driven members I've worked with. And I think that's because they feel like they've got something to prove because they didn't have this industry experience. But I'm really interested in your industry experience, because working at Jamie's CPA firm did qualify as
Right.
education and employment requirements, as you've said. I was unfamiliar with that, and that working at a CPA firm could count as that. What was that like to get that approved? Did they give you any issues with it? Any questions you
Um,
had to answer?
I had no problem. It was very straightforward. I just filled out the online questionnaire, reporting your hours. No one contacted me or anything. It was, because you're learning that type of financial planning, taxation. We also deal with estate planning and a lot of tax planning, of course, estate planning, and we deal with small businesses. So I guess in my description that fit the requirement.
Any reason you created your own firm despite having worked at Jamie's CPA firm? Was there a reason that you didn't want to stay at Jamie's CPA firm full time?
Well, kind of, I wanted to be a part of something that I created,
Yeah.
Yes, I could have done that. I could have just stayed there, but, I felt like this is an opportunity for us as a holistic business to grow.
Hmm.
And if I can help with some investment advice along with doing their tax returns, why not be able to offer that?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. It kind of works well having the two businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there is some crossover, and some things I do fall under the CPA firm, and some things I do fall under Brownsboro Financial. But I think from a compliance standpoint, I think it's a little cleaner.
Yeah, we just had Eric Klump with Chessie Advisors on the podcast last week, and he talked a lot about how he has his separate tax planning business.
Hmm.
In fact, he has two, and his own advisory business, and how he keeps them separate for compliance issues. I'm wondering, what's the dynamic of how you work? If you wake up on a Monday morning, are you working at Brownsboro, or are you working at the CPA firm? Do you time block? What's your relationship between the two?
So I typically, prior to just a few months ago, I would usually go in very early. I like to get in around 6:30 or 7, and
Oh, wow,
we,
really
we,
early.
we would structure our day so that I leave early but come home early. He leaves or he gets to the office a little later but stays later, so we can have the time with our child and everything like that, and not so much time at daycare. I like to do the financial planning early. I mean, I guess I don't know, with the stock market's opening early on the West Coast, it kind of made a little more sense. I can kind of do the financial planning for a few hours. If it's an hour, or great, then I move over to CPA work, or tax work. If it's a whole morning of financial planning, then I get as much tax work done as I can. So,
Mhm.
kind of whatever is the priority. So it is a little balancing. There's a balancing aspect to it, but so far it's really seemed to work.
Yeah.
So
Life is all about balancing.
yeah, exactly.
Rob, I'm interested in understanding kind of the client relationships between the two firms. Are you willing to share kind of the client numbers that you have at Brownsboro and maybe the client numbers that you have at the CPA firm? And if there
Oh,
is any
sure.
crossover, what that would be?
Yeah, no problem. I'd be happy to answer that if it's helpful. So Brownsboro Financial itself is a relatively small firm. I
Hmm.
mean, I have I think I have 14
Hmm.
clients. It's not a lot. I mean, I understand that, and I mean, and I wouldn't say most. I'd say half of them come from the CPA firm.
Oh, wow.
So it's kind of part of that. Well, we can offer you this if you would like it, and some people have taken that, and I think it's been very helpful. The client base on the financial planning side isn't huge. I mean, another reason for that is that we've had a lot of life changes over the past few years. We have an 18-month-old now, so if
Oh,
anybody out there has a newborn, you can empathize with how difficult and amazing the past 18 months have been. But that also means there wasn't a lot of growth, which is okay because Jamie's firm has been operating for almost 10 years. It's probably a mix between 60% businesses and 40% personal. We probably do about 400 to 450 returns a year.
wow. Yeah,
So
no
that
joke.
keeps us really busy.
Yeah.
And so I haven't been growing the firm like I planned to 3 years ago, but it's because of kind of, life events that, you have to figure out. So I've just kind of been maintaining the financial planning side. Obviously, referrals are a big part of my business right now, but we want to make sure that all of our tax our clients are well taken care of too.
Mhm.
So
Mhm. I really appreciate the transparency there. And there really is no shame in having a smaller business. I think that it's so important for our listeners to understand the diversity of the type of firms you can build to support your own life. That when we talk to members, it's really amazing. Some members really start knowing that they want to keep this small. They want to be able to pick up the phone and know what's going on in their clients' lives. We had Alex
mhm,
Yeager on a few months ago, and he talked about how important it is to keep his clients under 40 clients because he
mhm.
wants to be able to really service them in a way that is unique. I'm wondering, how do you service your clients in the financial planning business and the advisory business? Are you working with them on a monthly basis? Do you charge AUM? What's that relationship like?
There's a little bit of everything. I do. There's a couple of clients I do charge AUM, but most of them are on a retainer base. Some of them started when I was just starting out. I didn't have the CFP. And they're friends, so it's they don't. I don't charge them a whole lot, but it's typically $150 a month for a couple for financial planning. That's kind of I've gotten to that used to be my max, but now that's my minimum. Because of the recent CFP, I feel like it's justifiable. But I would think it's more on a quarterly basis. I like a lot of hands-on with the investment side. I do my own rebalancing. I'm able to do that because I don't have as many clients.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'd outsource that. But I do actually enjoy it. I'm kind of a dork when it comes to spreadsheets. So,
You
but
planners. You guys always want to plan and play in spreadsheets.
but I would say it's more of a quarterly basis. Anytime when someone has a question, obviously they'll check in. But I like to reach out to them ever so often. I'm real big on cash flows. I think a good cash flow can really show you what the next few years are going to look like. So I try to update those a couple of times a year, especially if there's big life events that have occurred. And then, the AUM clients, I'm constantly looking at their accounts, making sure that, we can take advantage of some, situations here and there. But, and I do have a couple hourly clients too that will reach out when they need some help. It's funny, the hourly clients are more of the entertainment industry folks.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I was going to ask if you've kept any relationships from the film industry. Did that turn into a niche for you?
I thought it would. It was really something I wanted to focus on. I was like, well, and it was also a reason why I went into financial planning, because I saw this need for financial planning. Not many crew members know a whole lot about investments, much less retirement accounts. And since there's no official, if you're in a union, you do get a pension, but there's no real plan for a 401k or anything. You're pretty much saving for yourself.
Wow.
So I thought I saw an opportunity there, and maybe there still is, but I've also found that entertainment folks and crew members like to do their own thing. So, so thought it was a niche. It didn't really play out to be such one, but that's okay. For whatever reason, a handful of my clients are close to retirement. Gay couples that are close to retirement and want to move away or leave LA or whatever and start new somewhere. So that's been kind of fun, because I used to travel a lot with, in the film industry from shoot to shoot, but I also love to travel. So researching where people want to move to is something that's kind of fun too.
Wow. And am I correct in saying that you've just relocated as well? Is that?
We are in the process of relocating. So we just finished building a house in Texas.
Wow.
I can't remember if I mentioned it earlier, but I grew up on a ranch, family ranch. And so we've just built a house on the ranch, and we spent about 2 months there during the holidays, just kind of checked out, just kind of refocusing on us, still working, but, we were able to work remotely, but being able to wake up and, just be able to walk outside and there's nothing is pretty amazing. It's a far cry from LA. So, we're not planning to move there permanently just immediately. We're still bouncing back and forth. We're here in LA through tax season. And so our plan is to be here during the busy months, all of the tax deadlines and whatnot. But then when we can, go out to the ranch and relax.
I must ask, what is it like to run businesses with your partner? Is there any issues with that?
We really haven't had any issues. When I started working at Jamie's company, we did it on a very temporary basis.
Interesting.
We're like, let's see how this goes. Let's do it very professional. I actually submitted a resume. I'm not kidding.
Wow, really?
Yes. We did it like by the book. So there was a proposal involved, this is your responsibilities, this is that. And I think since we approached it from a very business-like aspect, I think it helped. There was no confusion on what I was responsible for, or what I needed to do. And while I got my employment experience, I think it worked out really well. He actually made me read an accounting book, like a textbook.
Sure. Well, you're a representative of his firm.
But some people can work with each other, work together with their partners. Some people can't. We can work it out. So we have a very business relationship when we're in the office together, and a very personal one when we're home. So
I love that. We've had a number of different members on the podcast, actually, whether they're brother, sister, or spouses that have teamed up. And when it works, and that really is magical to be
Yeah.
able to have that higher level relationship with a partner, and it be able to be a professional one and one that supports your life, and where you can kind of commingle personal and professional into building your ideal life is really wonderful. I'm interested in what becoming a dad was like for you. I've had just recently a couple different fathers on the podcast, and they describe it as very similar to you, that it did change their trajectory of their firm in their first years. And I think that's really humble of them to describe that. We're not all on the race to 100 million under assets, and I
Right.
think there's maybe a lot of listeners that think that that's really the XYPN member MO, that everyone's racing to build these gigantic firms. But really, we see so many different members, male or female, or other, joining the network, looking to be able to build a lifestyle that supports what they want to do. And I think that's what's so wonderful about our industry, and really kind
Mhm.
of our niche right now, is that we're helping people do that. And so you became a father 18 months ago, and I'm interested in what personally that was like for you, balancing two businesses with your partner and becoming a father.
It was pretty challenging. Our son's adopted. We were on the adoption list for about a year
Mm.
before we were matched with a birth mother. So you kind of, in the back of your mind, you're like, well, we could get that call any day now. But then we got the call, and we
Yay.
had 6 weeks to prepare. But
Holy cow.
in reality, it actually was 4 weeks, because she delivered 2 weeks early. So
Wow.
yeah, and this all happened in Tennessee. So we had to fly out to Tennessee, but we were there in the hospital for the birth, which was pretty
Oh,
incredible and rare. And I'm actually getting chills just thinking about it, because it was
oh.
actually such a special moment for us as a couple, as a family. But we can always say we were there. And then everything changed. I remember the first night in the hospital. They didn't have a nursery. We were in this little small town right outside of Nashville, and the nurse comes in. Okay, it's time to feed, or it's time to feed the baby. I'm like, okay. Can you show us how to do it?
Wow.
She was like, are you sure? Okay. I'm like, we read the book, but we don't remember anything. So we had a crash course in everything, pretty much.
Wow.
I think we always, I don't know, it was, you plan for something, and of course, as a planner,
Mhm.
you try to try to get everything in control, but it's not in control. You every day brings something different, and you have to adjust in order to make that day work. And that day turns into weeks, and those weeks turn into months, and you're in survival mode.
Mm.
I don't think there's any other way to put it. I think you're in survival mode for at least a few months, if not if not 18 years. So, but we managed to figure it out. It was tough. So, as far as coming back to the financial planning business of it all, I was willing to slow down. I was like,
Mm.
I'm not going to market. I'm not going to look for any clients.
Mm.
Let's focus on him. Let's keep the tax business going. I will step back. I will help all my clients that I have. They were very cool about knowing that I would be taking a few weeks or a few months
Of
off. And
course.
so the correspondence kind of was minimal, but we were able to maintain it.
Mhm.
And so I guess for those listeners who are just looking, that don't want a business that is huge, it's definitely doable. I mean, obviously, we have the tax side of our, income, which can help, which allows me not to have
Mhm.
50, 100 clients.
Mhm.
But for me, it was something that gave me independence, and it also allows me to help these few clients that I have, because they come to you because they need help. And if you
Right.
and a lot of my clients are friends, and if I can help them get to their goals, then I think I'm doing a good job. So
Living what you preach is really so important. And a theme that I hear among XYPN members is really just that the part of the reason that they want to build the firm that they want to build is because they want to show their clients how they can live a life that they want to live. And I think you're doing just that. Talk to us about what you hope Brownsboro moves into, and you may not have any big plans for it, but what are you thinking over the next couple years? What do you hope happens?
I would like to grow a little bit more, even though, things have kind of been stagnant for the past couple of years. I think we're finally in a position now that I might be able to grow the business a little bit. And now I'm just realizing that we're actually on the adoption list for baby number 2. So this might take it might be another couple of years before I get to that point, because, we could have a second child any day now. So so things are still kind of evolving. So I don't know in a year or two if it's going to be much bigger, but I'd like to think that as I get a little older, I'll be able to help more and more people as they decide, as they come to the firm. I know it's not probably the best answer, but I'm just trying to project how the next couple of years are looking like, and it's kind of looking chaotic.
Have you ever helped a client through adoption?
No, I haven't. Not yet.
Yeah, I would imagine that you have a lot to offer in that regard.
We do. I've talked to some friends about adoption, but not a client base yet.
Mm-hmm.
No.
What's the conversation Jamie has with the clients to be able to kind of incorporate Brownsboro into potentially as another financial ally? How does that happen?
We don't really. We come from a point where we don't really push services on anybody. We want them to kind of ask for it from us. And when that happens, he can refer them to me. Mm-hmm. So if it's someone who's coming in that, has some money to invest a lot, and this has happened a couple of times, they would ask Jamie, well, we've got this, we want to find a place to put this money, but we don't trust anybody. And then Jamie's like, let me introduce my husband, Rob. And so that's kind of how that conversation gets going.
Yeah. Seems like a natural extension.
It's very organic. It just kind of comes up,
Mm-hmm. What would you say has been the hardest part of all of this over these years? Was there ever a time where you thought you wouldn't be able to make it?
Oh, absolutely. I'm thinking now, I mean, during those transition years, going from film to studying for the CFP exam, that whole process was very tough. And I think I went to a very dark place for a little bit, because studying for the exam was extremely difficult and challenging. Mm-hmm. I had to really I got to a point where I was just, I felt like I was going crazy. I had to really step back and take a little break and then reapproach it differently. So that was probably the most challenging aspect of it was, asking myself, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? I'm leaving this film career. Why would I want to do this? Why am I putting myself through this? But, I talked to a lot of people close to me, and they were encouraging, and I just stayed with it. And it was, even though it was extremely difficult, I'm glad I did it, because I was able to tell myself, look at what you did, look what you accomplished, and you didn't stop, you kept going. So
I'm glad you kept going.
I am too. It was tough.
Yeah.
I don't want to paint a rosy picture to everybody, because changing careers is tough, but if you want to do it, it's so rewarding, because, you're helping people. And and I think that ultimately that's what we want to do. I'm kind of going back a little bit, because I mentioned that I couldn't find a job that somebody wanted to hire someone like me. Well, I also couldn't find a company that had the same ideas that I did.
Yeah.
I didn't want to sell product. I had a couple of interviews at some big investment firms, and ultimately it just did not match up with my philosophy. And I know I didn't have a big leg to stand on because I didn't have any experience, but I really had to ask myself, do I want to go down this path, or do I really want to take a step back, focus a little, and go after what I really want to do? And
Yep.
I think that I made the right decision.
Absolutely. During those dark times, I imagine you leaned on your partner, Jamie, but tell us about, have you incorporated any support from a community during your years of building your business? Are you involved in any study groups, or do you have any friends that you really rely on? Because a theme that I've heard over these years is that you really can't do it alone, and that anyone who thinks they can is going to find themselves very lonely in
Yeah.
their guest bedroom.
Yeah.
Um,
No, it's
how
true.
did you handle that?
I have a very close family. I'm really close with my mom and dad and my brother. And so I went to them a lot.
Hmm.
I'd spend hours on the phone with them. We also have a really an amazing group of friends here in LA. So very fortunate to have like a big circle of friends that we kind of can go to when we're having trouble. So those were my main two groups that I would go to. Well, that and my therapist. So
Every planner needs a good therapist. I've heard that from more than a few members.
hey, I think having a therapist on call is a great idea. I've worked through a couple of situations in my life that have made me a better person because of it.
Hmm.
And if I mean this is a total side subject, but if anybody there shouldn't be any stigma about that at all. I encourage somebody to go see a therapist just so they can talk to somebody about this and this and that, and it really opens your eyes to so many things. So
Totally.
if you're hesitant about that, or don't be, because it it can improve your life so much. So anyway, that's my short little spiel on that.
I love that. There's not only have I heard from a number of members that a therapist is critical for getting through the first few years, but I've actually heard not a number of members, but an advisor actually has an in-house therapist that he has
Hmm.
work with his clients before they dive into the deeper stuff. And I think that's a really incredible way of incorporating that kind of mental health and understanding of money scripts and things like that. Have you ever thought about doing any sort of George Kinder training or life planning or anything like that to kind of elevate the work that you do with your clients?
Not at this time. Although I did last year, I did go to the FPA residency with,
Yes. Yeah.
and that was, I mean, really truly life changing.
Was it?
Yeah, that was pretty incredible because I had never been in an environment like that where they just throw everything at you, and you, you learn so much, especially about interacting with clients. That was a pretty special event, and I encourage anybody out there to attend. You will not regret it. You will gain
Mm,
so much knowledge and just perspective, I think.
yeah.
So
Lori DeFore was on the podcast a couple months ago, and she may have been in your group
she
with
was
FPA.
actually in my group. Yes.
Oh, was
Yeah.
she? That's so
John
wonderful.
and Wendy, I have to do a special shout out. It was the
Yes.
best group ever. So,
Oh,
yeah, we got along really well. We still stay in touch with each other. And I mean, the whole experience was very eye opening and scary, but an amazing weekend. So,
I'm so glad to hear that. I remember Lori on her podcast saying it was single-handedly the most impactful professional development opportunity she's ever taken.
I'll
And I thought
agree,
that was
definitely.
really persuasive. And I think that's a good reminder to all of our listeners that, we never stop learning and we shouldn't stop learning.
No.
And jumping at opportunities to do more continuing education, whether it be residency or life planning or getting an EA or something like that,
Hmm.
it really just helps you kind of keep your head in the game and
Definitely.
relate to clients in a new way.
Oh, I talk to my clients differently after that weekend. You
Wow.
know, I've structured my entire meeting differently. Especially like onboarding meetings.
I'd
So
love to dig into that. Tell us more about that. How has your onboarding meeting changed?
I don't come to the table with a lot of facts and charts and all this kind of stuff. I just come to a table with a notepad, and I
Hmm.
just want to hear what they have to say,
I love
and
it.
I just go off of them.
Hmm.
Because I want to. The idea behind the FPA residency is getting to know your clients. You don't get to know your clients by bringing a bunch of charts and bringing a bunch of numbers and stuff. You get to know your client by listening to them and following up with questions that really get to know the person. Once you know the person, you establish that trust with someone,
Mm.
and that goes so far.
I understand that a lot of your clients are kind of organic clients, whether they be friends and family or referrals from Jamie. How do you feel like it's been talking about financial planning with people maybe who are unfamiliar to the industry? Have you found it to be a challenge proving value of the industry that we all love?
I think that's a hard question. I think that proving your value, if I'm understanding the question right, I, I, I haven't had to prove it so much as
Mm.
far other than, you know, uh, well, you kind of stumped me here. I'm not exactly sure how to answer this. I will have to say though, when I do get an email or a letter from time to time from my clients, and they just want to express how much they enjoyed me making something possible for them,
Oh, yep.
and whether it's moving to a new house or buying their first house or moving to a new country,
Mm.
being able to just share that with them and help them along the way. I guess that's kind of how I prove my worth.
Yeah, and I think what I was getting more towards is someone who is yet a client, someone maybe
Oh,
who has
okay,
never
okay,
experienced financial planning before. I mean,
right,
I think that's one of the challenges is that as RIA owners, you aren't able to share testimonials. But
right.
how has it been with a cold lead,
Hmm.
kind of discussing the value you offer?
Um, Let me think. Well, we might need to. I'm not sure about this one,
Sure.
Maddie.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. 45 minutes. Let
I'm
me write it
trying
down.
to think because um, just between you and me, I haven't had a lot of cold
Okay.
meetings.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Most of them are people that I either know or they're other existing clients. So I
Yeah.
don't know if I'll be able to help with that.
Yeah, no, I think that's the honest answer, and I do think that that's a valuable answer. That really, when we think about your firm, you've grown it in a way where you don't need cold leads because you have a slow increase of warm leads coming to you.
It is.
Um,
It's rare, and I'll admit it. It's a very rare situation. I'm very fortunate to be in that situation. Um, but as far as cold leads, I've only had a couple.
yeah, and that makes sense because you're building a really
Hmm.
intentional firm with referrals from both your community, but also from the CPA firm that you've aligned yourself with. So I
Right.
understand that. I didn't mean to stump you on that.
Oh
I
no,
think
no,
it's
no,
a
no.
really
I'm trying to think of something that would be educational to tell the listeners. But that one kind of, I'm not too sure I have much
no.
input on that.
I think that that's a really valuable answer for our listeners, and that
Okay.
you can build a firm that grows at the scale you want to,
Hmm.
and it onboards clients at the rate you want, and it's the
Right.
clients that you do want to work with. I really get that and understand that. And I think it's important for our listeners to understand that there is so many different ways of doing this. And I've really appreciated our
Absolutely.
interview today because you've talked a lot about kind of the personal side of it and the big wins you've had in your life that have been facilitated by the business you've decided to run. Um, I'm wondering, Rob, if you have advice for other career changers. We're rounding out our time together, and I'm wondering if you have advice for other career changers that may be finding themselves a little restless and interested in building a better life for themselves.
I think that people go through life and hold back a lot. I
Mm,
think you should at least try it. You only have one life to live, and you just got to try it. It may not work for everybody, but at least you're able to look back and tell yourself, I gave it a go. So, I've done that with my entire life. I moved out to California with nothing. I didn't know anybody in the entertainment industry, but I hit the pavement running, and and just worked really hard. I think if you're holding back, I just say go for it. You can make it whatever you want.
hmm
That's the
hmm
best part about having your own business. You can create how you want your business to be run with the people that you want to. And if I was to look back and tell my younger self,
There you go.
you don't have to be perfect.
You don't?
You don't have to be perfect because I was a perfectionist. I wanted everything to be just right before I did anything. And someone told me, you don't have to be perfect because you already know more than the person that's sitting on the other side of the table from you. And because you know more, you're very valuable to that person. So you don't have to have the perfect website. You don't have to have the perfect business cards. You don't have to have this or that. Just go, because you just do it because you know more than that other person knows. And that makes you extremely valuable. So
I really appreciate that sentiment around XY. We talk about how perfection can really slow things down, that we're really, nothing in life is perfect. And if we waited around for it to be perfect, we would waste our whole
you
life and our
wouldn't do
whole day at
anything. Yeah.
least. And this idea that delivering service that is of the highest standard you can produce, but it's not this perfect thing, is a really important reminder that if you do wait around to make sure your website is perfect, you're going to waste a few months of
Oh,
getting
yeah.
clients. And if you wait around till your pitch is perfect, you may miss the opportunity to have some organic conversations. Any other pieces of advice you have for our listeners, Rob, whether it be on the personal side or the professional side of building a lifestyle that kind of, as you said, create the business that you wanted to create with the people you wanted to create it with?
I would just say be true to yourself. Don't let someone persuade you to do something you're not comfortable with.
Mm,
You just trust your gut. I've always trusted my gut, and it's always put me in the right direction. So
yeah,
I would just say stay true to yourself.
great
Um,
advice.
yeah, because at the end of the day, it's your life, you know. So
Sure is. And I think a
and
lot of us take it for granted and realize maybe when it's too late that there were other things
yeah,
we wanted to do.
yeah, I say
Yeah.
go for it.
Thank you so much for this interview,
Oh,
Rob. I
thanks,
can't
Maddie.
wait to show other career changers as well as other folks in this industry just what you can do when you decide to become your own business owner, and the privilege that grants you to be able to design the life that you want. I really look forward to hearing about potentially a number two in your life. And I know
Me too.
your first one is your namesake, correct?
That's right.
Oh,
I'm Robert Brown the Fourth. He's Robert Brown the Fifth. So as Robert the Fifth, he's got a lot to live up to already. No,
he sure
I'm just
does.
kidding. But
Is it going to be Rob Brown the Sixth for number
no,
two?
no, no, no. We're not going to do that to him. No.
That's fair. That's fair, Rob. Well, thank you so much, and really for being so open about what you've been through for the past few years as you built your business, but also just kind of what came before financial planning. I think it's so important to highlight that these different careers that we find ourselves in out of college are often not really where we want to be long term, and that there are pivot points we can make.
Yeah.
So, on behalf of the listeners, thank you so much, Rob. Any final words?
I really appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for the time. And it sure was a pleasure. Thank you for allowing me to be on the podcast. It was truly special.
Absolutely. Thank you, listeners. Have a great and safe day.
XY Planning Network's annual benchmarking survey is out. Are you curious about the average number of clients XYPN members get in their first year, or how successful niches really are? To answer these burning questions and more, we've again enlisted a professional research firm to complete our annual benchmarking study. Get your copy hot off the press and discover vital statistics such as the median advisor revenue by years in practice and sources of firm growth, from referrals to blogging, social media, and more. Head over to xyplanningnetwork.com/study to purchase your copy today.
Be sure to join our VIP community at xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to hang out with other XYPN radio listeners, ask questions for future mailbag episodes with Alan and Kitsis, and finally, to find a community of like-minded financial advisors. Thanks so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time.
You're not alone, and you're not crazy. It's scary starting, building, and growing your own financial planning firm. And that's why we put together a free private community just for you, the Cutting Edge Financial Planner. Go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP or text XYPN Radio to 33344 and join a network of thousands ready to change the lives of Gen X and Gen Y clients.